if you guys can hear my heart pounding. Okay. This is going to be unscripted. This is going to be this is very raw for me I'm going to try to get through this without tearing up or crying, but if I do, it is what it is. It's okay. Where have I been? I can't remember the last video that I posted, but I decided to take a step away from YouTube and making videos. I was undergoing a transformation, which I'm so grateful for. And the Lord has done exceedingly and abundantly in every area of my life. Back then, from the last video I had posted, I was working through a lot of things, a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of emotional chaos. During that time, I felt like I was okay, that I was handling it and coping the best that I knew how. I was smoking a lot of weed, drinking. I was self-medicating. July 2021, the Lord had been tugging on my heart and I gave him my yes. And that's where my life was completely made new. And I'm so grateful for that. He delivered me from New Age. He delivered me from witchcraft. He delivered me from depression and anxiety. And those are things that I thought I was going to have to deal with for the rest of my life. I was prepared to take medication for the rest of my life for those things, and he pulled me out of it, and I'm so grateful. But to fast forward a little bit, I've been actively pursuing God. Like I just love God so much, and I'm so grateful for Jesus and what he did on the cross, and just having mercy on me, because he could have easily just allowed my life to end at a point where I was being so rebellious and disobedient. And I'm so grateful for his mercy. July of 2022, about a year later, I was at my 9-to-5. I was working logistics, and I'd been there for almost 5 years. And I was just not really happy there. I didn't feel fulfilled. And I was just asking God, like, what's next? Like, this can't be what you have for me. And so he called me to do photography and videography full time, to which on one hand I was really ecstatic. I don't know if I can, my words aren't going to be 100% today, because it's been an emotional week, but I was so excited about it. But on the other hand, I was terrified, because I'm leaving a place of stability to go into the unknown. But I knew that if God called me to it, he's going to get me through the obstacles that might come with that call. Not me crying already, but it is what it is. God is just so good. Once he gave me the revelation that he wanted me to do photography and videography full time, I had started making arrangements to put in my 2 weeks notice, and he had me put in 2 days. I had injured my wrist, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you're not going to be working. I can write you a note, but you're not going to be working. So it turned in from 2 days to I didn't come back to work. So I went on vacation. He had me go on vacation. Like, how good is God that he cares about rest and wants you to go on vacation? So he had me go to Punta Cana. I went to Punta Cana by myself. It was my first solo trip, but it was also my first God-ordained out of the country trip. I've never been out of the country by myself, and that was my first one. And he paid for everything. I talk a little bit about that in a short that I posted a while back, but everything was fully paid. He even went as far as to getting me a swim up, which, I mean, I know that I'm a little high maintenance, but he got me a swim up with the jacuzzi, and the suite was huge. And I had my own, they called it like a butler, but I think they're called concierge now. But I had somebody like, essentially like, I don't want to call it like waiting on you hand and foot, but like he was there for like all my needs. And that was something I never knew that God could do. Like, I never knew that God wanted me to go on vacations. I never knew that God wanted me to live a life of like luxury. Like, I thought that was, you know, something that he was just kind of frowned upon. I had an amazing time. I ended up coming back. Obviously didn't come back to my job. And I immediately, my faith walk immediately just started after returning from Punta Cana. I went through a lot of deliverance from things that, and situations that had hurt me in the past. He showed me the areas that I needed to work in and who I needed to forgive, and that was a very emotional process. Fast forward to the end of 2022, I knew that it was time for me to start looking at my own place, and God gave me a vision of a place that he wanted me to be at. And in the vision, I was walking through the apartment and I was laying my hands on it and I was praying over it. And so when I woke up, I'm like, okay, God, you're gonna have to tell me where to go. You're gonna have to show me who to talk to, who I need to speak with. And at the time, I had a photography studio nearby, and I thought that maybe he wanted me to stay local. And lo and behold, he moved me over to a completely different state. And when I got to the state initially, when I got here, I was really just kind of like, well, I don't know why I'm here. Like, I feel like this is a waste of time. Like, there's all these other places I could be looking at. And I went to my first viewing of the apartment, and they were trying to get me to apply right then and there. And I just knew it wasn't right. I'm just like, it doesn't feel right. Like, I know what God showed me, and I don't think this is it. And so I'm like, well, while I'm here, I might as well, you know, check out this other place that I had seen the night before. I remember like them asking me, they're like, well, why won't you apply right now? And I was like, well, you know, I have another apartment tour, so I'm just checking that first. And then, you know, they're like, well, where is it? And I told them where it was, and they're like, oh, well, like, that's far, and, you know, it's not as diverse, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've literally lived in the suburbs for most of my life. Like, lack of diversity is not something that scares me. But I knew in my heart, like, because that person was trying to talk me out of going to that place, I knew I was supposed to be there. So anyway, I ended up driving, I think, about an hour and a half to the next apartment. And I went to call them first to like let them know, like, hey, can I, you know, do the apartment tour? Nobody answered. So I'm like, oh, I gotta pop up. So we're gonna pop up. So I popped up. I'm like, hey, are you guys doing apartment tours? The lady nodded. She let me in. I'm just walking through, and I'm like, it's just so beautiful, so beautiful. And the minute I stepped into the door of the first unit that she showed me, I heard, this is it. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm gonna be real. Like, I'm gonna be transparent. Like, you gonna have to make something shake, because my finances are not financing. The way my credit score is set up right now, like, you gonna have to give me favor in this area, because there's nothing I can do on my own strength that can make this happen. So long story short, I get approved. And so I'm like, okay, God, like, now you're really going to have to do this. Like, I'm completely relying on you. So I left my 9-to-5 job. I was getting gigs in between then. Left the state that I knew and grew up in, went to a whole nother different state, starting completely over, doing the thing that God called me to do. And I'm like, okay, well, like, maybe when I move here, it's gonna be a brand new start. That's where all the clients are gonna come in. I moved in January 15th, 2023. I've been here for 5 months, and I have not booked a single client. By the grace of God, He's been sustaining me. I've been really out here living on faith that God is gonna provide. So earlier last week, an eviction notice was slipped under my door. And I'm not even gonna lie, like, that's so I was embarrassed. Like, I was embarrassed. I'm not a person that's irresponsible with money. I used to be really irresponsible with money, but I take care of my business. I take care of the bills first before I put it toward anything that's considered like miscellaneous things. Not really even a big shopper. So for that eviction notice to come through my door, even despite me being in communication with my landlord and letting her know what's going on, I had applied for rental assistance. And for whatever reason, that's taking longer than usual. And, the deadline for that is approaching because I guess that program is coming to a close. When that note came under my door, it was so hard for me not to go into a panic. And just having so much debt, it's easy for someone to look at this like outside looking in and assume that I'm just irresponsible, that I just don't know how to manage my money, that I'm just careless, when in fact I'm not. And it's so frustrating sometimes to have to explain that, but also to know that you're walking in your purpose and in your calling and you're not seeing the fruit of that. And it's frustrating. Like, it's frustrating. Last month, I went to Millions Conference, Tiffany Montgomery's Millions Conference, which was amazing and very pivotal, and I learned a lot. But after I came back from Tiffany Montgomery's Millions Conference, that's when I started noticing an attack on my finances. Shortly after I got back, I went to the hospital for asthma. I hadn't struggled with asthma in a very long time, so that really confused me. Shortly after that, it was just attack after attack and after attack. But I really believe that God won't let me get evicted. I believe that God is not going to allow me to get evicted. I believe that if He called me here, because I didn't wake up and choose this place. Like, if I had got to pick, I would have picked something like Vegas or anything else. But I don't believe that God is going to allow me to be evicted, one. And I do believe that there's going to be a financial turnaround soon. But I'm like really trying to hold on to my faith and still be obedient. I don't know where this channel is going to go. I don't know how God wants to orchestrate this. If you stuck here this far, I pray that God blesses you exceedingly and abundantly, according to Ephesians 3:20. I really believe that God is about to do a turnaround in my life. And I know a lot of people would be like, well, why don't you just get a part-time job or just, look for another job? Like, I know for a fact if I wanted a job, I can have a job. But when it comes to God, there is no plan B. When it comes to God, His children, the righteous are never forsaken. And God does not reward obedience with shame. And although things feel so ghetto right now, I believe that He's going to come through with something, just something. Even in the Bible, where He asked Abraham to move, He provided. When He asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, before He even laid a hand on Isaac, He provided a ram. And I do believe that God is going to somehow, in some way, provide the rams. There's someone, a business influencer or whatever, like somebody's going to need a photographer and videographer. And I just don't know how God is going to do it. But that's where I've been.